Hey, this is Sean Pickett. I'm the founder and CEO of Sales Integrity, a B2B tech sales coach, and your host for the Sales Integrity Podcast. I'm ready to make it another great podcast today. And with that, let's get today's episode rocking and rolling. Welcome back to the Sales Integrity Podcast. After a week hiatus, we are back on the air. We had the Memorial Day weekend last week, and I was battling a pretty nasty bug that zapped my energy and had me flat on my back. So we took a week off last week, but we are back now. I feel much better. I feel great, and we are ready to dive into today's episode. The topic, the 4 cornerstones of lead generation success. So we're building upon our Prospecting on Purpose series, and we are going to revisit some of the topics that we have. We're going to kind of pull it all together with a lot of the different methods that we've been advocating here in the podcast throughout this series. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. The first bit of research, I always like to start off with some research. First bit of research we have is by Gleanster Research. What they found is that only 25% of leads are legitimate and should advance to sales. So that's 1 out of every 4 leads that you're working on are legitimate and should advance to become a sale. So given that, what does that mean? What can we pull from that? Well, that's what we're going to focus on here on today's episode. We're going to talk about the 4 cornerstones of lead generation success. And notice I didn't say 1, I didn't say 2, I didn't say 3, I said 4. And that's going to allow you to have a well-balanced prospecting system in place, if you will, where you're going to be consistent and you're going to have enough methods that you're leveraging so that way you have a nice steady stream of leads as you're generating those on a weekly basis and trying to achieve your goals. So first cornerstone for lead generation success is referral selling. So it starts with referral selling. I'm going to kind of go in order here today. All 4 are important, but they kind of build on top of one another. And I'm going to start with kind of the lowest hanging fruit, which is referral selling. Back on episode 34, we discussed this topic in detail. So if you haven't listened to episode 34 of the Sales Integrity Podcast and you want a lot more detail about referral selling, go back and listen to that episode. But just to revisit the research that we focused on then, this was done by Dale Carnegie, is the source here. And Dale Carnegie, in the research they did, found that 91% of customers say they'd give referrals, yet only 11% of salespeople actually ask for referrals. Again, 91% of customers say they'd give referrals, only 11% of salespeople actually ask for referrals. So what gives there? Well, usually it's because there's not a purpose-driven approach. Obviously, we're talking about prospecting on purpose. Usually that's something that people kind of do on the fly or just expect to come in occasionally and wait on customers to actually provide them referrals. And what you need to do is actually be purpose-driven with it. Like anything else you need to prepare, sit down and think through your referral selling process, be purpose-driven in the way you're going to ask and make it easy for your customers to be able to give you referrals. We cover a lot of details in episode 34 on how to do that. So definitely note that down and go back and listen to episode 34 in the Sales Integrity Podcast to get some ideas about referral selling. But at the very least today, I'm trying to get you to pull everything together that we've been talking about and really explore it further after the podcast on how you're going to go apply what we're talking about here in a well-balanced prospecting on purpose approach. So first thing you need to look at is your referral selling game. And if you just ask, that's the easy recommendation there. Just ask and ask frequently. You'll be surprised. You'll get a lot more referrals than you're getting now, especially if you're not asking. Okay, let's move on to cornerstone number 2, and that is strategic networking. And we covered this in episode 40. The research that we kind of found then was from Sales Benchmark Index. And what the Sales Benchmark Index research found is that 73% of executives prefer to work with sales professionals referred by someone they know. Again, 73% of executives prefer to work with sales professionals referred by someone they know. Now, you might say, hey, wait, Sean, doesn't this fall into the referral? Doesn't this fall into referral selling, cornerstone number 1? Yes and no. the referral selling that I'm referring to in Cornerstone number 1 is asking your clients, your customers, okay, and just doing that consistently. And then the cornerstone number 2 is strategic networking. That's actually receiving facilitated introductions from those in your strategic network to target market end client contacts or end customer contacts. So keep that in mind. That's executives already have relationships with other salespeople that they know, like, and trust. And if you're referred by one of those said salespeople that they know, like, and trust, they prefer to work with you because of that. So that's something you want to think about is your strategic networking game. How consistently are you networking with like-minded professionals, specifically sales professionals that are calling on and selling to the same target market clientele that you're pursuing? So just keep that in mind. And what you want to do is the kind of the takeaway here. Again, go back and listen to episode number 40. I provide a lot of good detail on it there. But if you don't want to do that, just sit down again and think about your strategic networking game. Where do these other salespeople congregate? Where do they hang out? Where do they frequent? How can you reach out to them? Search for some of them in LinkedIn through your network. Look for groups on Meetup. Look for events that are out there where your end customers would be that might attract those folks. But you certainly want to build out a nice network of trusted advisors and contacts that are within your strategic network so you can refer them, but also so they can refer you. So that is cornerstone number 2, which is strategic networking. Moving right along. Cornerstone number 3 is social selling. We've talked a lot about this lately. This seems to be all the rage out there. I ask every guest when I have guests on for interviews about this as well. But if you go back to episode 35, there's a few episodes I've done on social selling. But episode 35 specifically had some research from Aberdeen. And what Aberdeen found is that 73% of salespeople using social selling as part of their sales process outperformed their sales peers and exceeded quota 23% more often. Again, the Aberdeen research found this: 73% of salespeople using social selling as part of their sales process outperformed their sales peers and exceeded quota 23% more often. So what is the takeaway there? Well, go back, listen to episode number 35, and actually some of the more recent ones, I provide very specific tactics on social selling and defining it. What does it mean for you? How can you leverage it? And how can you be purpose-driven with it? How can you prospect on purpose using social selling? Not just sitting back and waiting for leads to come in. You can actually be proactive in leveraging social selling within your arsenal of lead generation tactics. So social selling, there's lots of research out there. I provide quite a bit of it on the podcast. So just, again, the takeaway here is sit down and think about your social selling game. So now we have 3 cornerstones there. Number 1 is referral selling, and specifically getting referrals from customers and clients and even past clients. The second cornerstone is strategic networking, leveraging your network to receive facilitated introductions. Third one is social selling, being purpose-driven with social selling to generate leads. So look at those 3, sit down and say, okay, now I got 3 of them. What am I going to do? How am I going to leverage each one of these 3 of the first 4 cornerstones? And then the 4th cornerstone really pulls all 3 of those together and helps you execute those more effectively and efficiently. And the 4th cornerstone is systematic sales messaging. If you go back to episode number 12, way back to episode number 12, there was some research from HubSpot. And HubSpot found that 44% of salespeople give up after 1 follow-up. Yet 80% of sales require 5 follow-ups. So that means that 44% of salespeople have an 80% probability they won't close the sale because they just give up too soon. I've done other episodes on follow up and follow through and being persistent and all that good stuff on systematic sales messaging. But that's really what systematic sales messaging is. Look at all the research. It takes anywhere from 7 to 12 touch points before a sale is made. So you need to be persistent. You need to be consistent with your follow-ups. You need to follow up and follow through. And the easiest way to do that is to apply a systematic sales messaging approach. Think of 12 touch points, right? And some people call this a sales funnel. So some people call this a sales funnel, and think of all the touch points in that sales funnel. What are the different steps? Think of it as step 1, 2, 3, all the way through 12, and come up with creative value-based touch points, but more specifically, create messaging and what I like to call tangible value assets. So it could be short white papers, it could be infographics, it could be videos, it could be audios. So you're going to think through what is a logical step-by-step approach for me to reach out to prospects, keep in touch with them, but add value with every touch point. So you should never just call to check in, or I'm following up, or checking in, or touching base. I did an episode on that as well. That's not value-based. That's not something anyone has the time for, right? So you need to have a point and be purpose-driven in your follow-up, and systematic sales messaging is absolutely the answer for that. So that's the fourth cornerstone. That's having you think through all of your messaging, your value-based touch points, and the material and the info and tangible value assets that you're going to share with your prospects throughout those 7 to 12 touch points. So that also, systematic sales messaging works in conjunction with referral selling, strategic networking, and social selling, because all of those require messaging that is value-based, and systematic sales messaging can help pull that all together and execute upon this framework of prospecting on purpose. So that'll do it for today's episode. Go back and just kind of listen to this and really sit down as the takeaway, and the action item is think about your referral selling game, your strategic networking game, your social selling game, and pull it all together and execute it successfully by using your systematic sales messaging approach. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are the 4 cornerstones of lead generation success. So that'll do it for today's episode. Let's end today's episode with a few quick reminders. Real quick, before we end today's episode, I wanted to just share a few quick reminders with you. No matter where you listen to the Sales Integrity Podcast, please subscribe to it. Just subscribe to the show so you get them automatically on a weekly basis. The more subscribers we have, the more we're found out there by other potential subscribers, so that greatly helps the show. We are now on Stitcher Radio, so in addition to Stitcher, we're on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. And no matter where you subscribe or listen to us, please provide a 5-star rating and a quick 1 to 2 sentence review. That also helps others find the podcast. So help us grow the show. That would be great. And also, we still have our free 7-day video email course out there. You can go to mastercomplexselling.com to subscribe to that. So again, mastercomplexselling.com. It's a free 7-day video email course titled 7 Steps to Master the Game of Complex Technical Selling. So that'll do it for today. Go out there in the sales world today. Help your customers buy what they want, what they need, and what benefits them. And most importantly, go out there and make it a great day.